Hey everybody, it's the Dr. Pilot. We're going on an IFR flight today. You can see this is a pretty low ceiling. We are headed from Rogers, Arkansas to Hot Springs, Arkansas. This is a work day where we're flying down with me and a couple of our nurses that are headed to help some patients out in Hot Springs, Arkansas. We got a full day ahead of us. So we're taxiing out here. We've already done all our checklists. We've already got our IFR approach or departure. We're flying what's called the Rogers 4 departure here, which is a takeoff on runway 20 and then an immediate turn to the heading of 183 and a climb to 3,000 feet. You'll see once we climb to 3,000 feet here in a little bit that we get kind of stuck in the clouds. They give us a turn direct, but she leaves me kind of stuck in the clouds. Now, this was a cold day. It was in the 40s, low 40s, really low 40s. But it wasn't to where we felt like we would have any icing at all. So I wasn't using any TKS this morning at all, so I didn't have to worry about that, which was good. But the great advantage of flying in the wintertime is you take off really fast. You may see that we took off really fast here from this this runway, probably 12 or 1,300 feet. It was fast. I mean, we were up. And there were 3 of us on board, had about 60 gallons, so it was pretty quick. So you can see me already turning here to 183, and we haven't quite hit the clouds yet. But I love this view right over here, right off the front there. You can see it right off the front wheel, the front landing gear, and it's an amazing view. I think it's pretty cool. So we're climbing out now. We're going up to 3,000 feet. You can see we're just now, if you look at the top window, we're just now starting to get into that top layer, and it just starts clouding out. We can't see anything out the front now, but I can clearly see, you can still see the ground here. So we're climbing out now. We're going up pretty fast. Now this is a wet cloud. So what I mean by that is if you look up here on the screen, you can kind of see some like, water droplets. The bottom parts of the clouds seem to me, when we travel, to be the wettest. They have the most moisture, which is pretty amazing. The top parts of the clouds, though, from what I understand from research and watching a lot of videos and learning a lot of things from other pilots, is where a lot of the heavy icing comes. So if this was a little bit colder day, as you can see, we're starting to top out right here. We're starting to top out of these clouds. This is where the most icing would be, which I find interesting. You'd think it would be down where the wettest part was, but people say that the majority of the icing occurs at the top part of the clouds, which is just amazing. So here we are. She's not given me a turn yet, but she's told us to hang out at 3,000. So here we are hanging out at 3,000 feet, and sorry, I was looking at a little doll one of my office staff members gave me. They said, this is my attitude first thing in the morning at the office. I don't see it, but hey, that's what they say. So maybe I'm grumpy in the mornings. I don't know. I'm not a morning person, but when you got a day full of patients ahead of you, you're saving your energy, I guess, first thing in the morning. I don't know. Here you can see we've made a turn here to 183, but she's still keeping us at 3,000 feet. Now the reason they did that was, I guess there was another airplane on an IFR plane coming out of Springdale. They were coming at us this way, we were coming at us this way. So I don't know what altitude they gave that other plane, but they kept me at 3,000 feet. So I'm just sitting here. Now if this would have been a freezing day, we'd have been right in the middle of the ice, but 507 Romeo Whiskey has an excellent TKS system on it, which we used extensively the previous weekend when we were in New Mexico. We flew out to what's called Red River, New Mexico, and landed at Red River Airport. Actually, it was Angel Fire Airport near Red River where we flew into, which is right next to Taos Airport, not that far away from Taos. Never been into Taos, but that Angel Fire Airport was awesome. It was easy to get in and out of. There was literally one valley that you went over, and one crest of mountaintops that you went over, and then you just turned left and went right into the valley. So it was very simple to get in and out of. I did some recording of that as well, but I don't know if I'll get that video done or not. I'm going to try to. The audio was not working properly on my main GoPro. So I have a GoPro 12 here, but I'm having trouble with it, and I think I've narrowed it down to this little thing right here. I think I might have a bad SD card, because what'll happen is it'll record for 5 or 6 minutes, and then it will the next files that come after that, as it keeps recording, will become corrupted. So, and I'm not getting any audio on them either, so I don't know. All the Reddit computer groups say that it sounds like it's a bad SD card, so I'm going to replace the SD card and give it a try. If it doesn't work, then I may be replacing that GoPro 12. Here we are. We've finally been given our climb. We went up to about 7,000 feet here, and you can see it's just a beautiful, beautiful flight. Over to the, I guess that would be southwest. That would be where Dallas, Texas is. And you can kind of see a thin, it's kind of a thinning layer that way of no clouds. So it looks like it might have been clear a couple, 200-300 miles towards Dallas. But, you know, we're not heading to Dallas. We're headed to the southeast. So if you look out over the southeast, it's just completely covered. Now, the nice thing about the airport we're flying into, which is Hot Springs Airport, is I've been into there probably 100 times over the last 7 or 8 years of flying down to my other clinic. We go down there about every 3 or 4 weeks, give or take, and spend an entire day on a Saturday seeing patients that would otherwise not be able to get to the clinic, you know, on a Monday through Friday because they work or things like that. So that's why we do that. But you can see it's a completely IFR day. The approach there is great. It's an RNAV approach. There's an ILS too, but I prefer the RNAV. It's a lot easier for me. I don't know why. In this aircraft, I like the RNAV approaches better than the ILS approaches, and I certainly don't care for VOR approaches. No offense to those of you pilots that do, but I'm not a big fan of the VOR approaches. This approach, RNAV 05, you kind of fly down to a point and you got to circle out and get into a hold before you come back in for the approach. But luckily, the controller gave us an option when I got a little closer. They go, hey, would you like to go vectors and not have to do the procedure turn? And I said, yes, absolutely. So they did that, which was really, really good. I'm currently studying for my commercial pilot right now. I want to get that done, and then I'm going to get my multi-rating as well. And I may go, a buddy of mine's got some opportunities to fly some Lears. I may go do that since I'm down to working about 3 days a week now. I'm kind of partially retired, but I'm down to working 3 days a week, so I have some time, and I'd like to go do that, I think. So I'm actually studying my commercial, so if any of you got any tips on studying the commercial, I'll tell you, give them to me. I need them. It's kind of ridiculous, but I'm studying for this commercial, and you know, there's a lot of math involved again, and it's kind of like when you get your initial private pilot license, you're doing all the math calculations, weight and balance and all that kind of stuff, and I don't do any of that anymore. It's all done on an iPad. You know, the only math calculation I do in my head at all is the top of descent and how many minutes before I arrive that I need to start down, and that's it. You know, having to remember some of that old weight and balance stuff is just utterly ridiculous. I'm having to restudy all that stuff and relearn all that stuff, or at least try and rehash it. So hopefully I'll get it done relatively soon. I'm hoping to get the test passed here in, you know, the next month or two. I've got all the hours, I've got all the time requirements, I've got everything else other than passing the test and sitting in a plane for 3 hours with an instructor and going through the maneuvers. That's it. I'm qualified. So you can see we're now on our RNAV approach into Hot Springs, Arkansas. The controller's already vectored us a little bit here, which is awesome. You can see it's still really, 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 you know, dense clouds. I want to say it was about 1,000 to 1,500, maybe 2,000 feet of thickness, something around there. But it was an IFR approach. So again, if this would have been, you know, if it had been a little bit colder, getting down into these tops of these clouds would have made made us a big difference in terms of icing. But thankfully, these TKS systems that flying into known icing, you can do these no matter what. If you're brave enough and if you're confident enough to do that. Obviously, I don't recommend it, but a day like today was a perfect day to do this, so it worked out really well. So you can see we're starting to enter the clouds here. We're on our descent. I believe the first point was somewhere right around 3,000 feet. And then we go down from 3,000 down to about 2,300 feet. And then we held at 2,300 feet. Of course, we hold in the clouds for a true IFR approach. And so here we go. We've started down. You can see the nose just tipped on the aircraft, and we're starting down a little further. And we're also making that final procedure turn to get on course for runway 05. Beautiful morning, beautiful IFR flight. It wasn't really windy or anything like that. It was a great day to do this. Really smooth. You can see the plane's not bouncing around much or doing anything too excessive. I found it a very, very simple, very simple approach. Now, a few years ago, not having my IFR license, today we would have had to driven down to Hot Springs, and from Rogers, Arkansas to Hot Springs, Arkansas, it's a 4-hour car ride. And then you work an entire day in the clinic, and then it's 4 more hours home. So we would leave at 5 in the morning and get home 9 or 10 o'clock at night. When we fly, we can leave at 8:30 in the morning and be home by 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock. So it makes an enormous amount of difference in time. So here we go. We're going into the clouds again. It's a moisture. There's wet clouds. You can see all the moisture kind of right up here on the screen. The camera's picking it up as it's flowing across the camera and then kind of going into the condensing into moisture. Interesting view. For those of you that aren't used to flying IFR, this type of flying is very, very nerve-wracking. And the only way to overcome that fear of it is to do it. Just do it. Get out and do it. Many times I've called pilot friends of mine to do it with me that I knew were more confident flying IFR than I was when I first got my license for IFR, because I wasn't very confident in doing it, and being worried about becoming spatially disoriented and that kind of stuff is a real concern for a lot of people, and rightly so it should be. But I will say that the G1000 perspective with the GFC 700 autopilot, it flies, approaches like it's on an absolute rail, like it's literally on train tracks. And so you can rest assured that you have that ability to not get disoriented by just flying the instruments and flying the aircraft, which is what you're supposed to do anyway. I don't know. I learned how to fly IFR in an old traditional 6-pack on my Columbia 300. And so I think that's a good base for learning to fly IFR. If you just learn on a glass panel, you don't learn the intricacies of it all and the precision, I think, as much as you should. And having that feel, to be able to do this is really, really important. So we're still descending here, but we're not descending. Sorry, we're stuck right in the middle of this layer until we reach the final approach point. It was probably 3 or 5 miles. I don't remember off the top of my head. But again, it was cold. But if you look on the wing, you can see there's no ice forming whatsoever. We're starting to pop out a little bit on the bottom. You can see off the nose there, the nose wheel, you can start to see some ground contact. And there we go, we've popped out. So that's an amazing feeling. Some people say it's more beautiful when you come out of the tops of the clouds, when you get above them on an IFR plane. I think sometimes it's more exciting to see the ground again and know you're not going to hit the ground when you come out of that approach, and know you can land safely. Hot Springs is an amazing area. There's a lot of rivers. You can see the river here. Finally we come up to this one little river, and when you go right across the river, the runway shows up, which is a beautiful place. There's a lot of beautiful homes right along the river here. You can see some of them here. Hot Springs, Arkansas is known for the racetrack that they have there. It's called Oaklawn Racetrack. It's a horse racing track. It's been around for many, many years, but it's a famous horse racing track. I don't understand this at all, but horse racing starts in January, for crying out loud. It's freezing. How are the horses running in January? I've never understood that, but it seems to be something that they do, and it doesn't make any sense to me. So, and then it goes through spring, and by the time spring ends, it's done. And you would think that's when they would be running, but they start in January. So anyway, runway 5 is coming up. You can see the river that we're crossing here. This is kind of the final barrier, the final marker that we look at. There's a beautiful view. If you look over there, there's a beautiful view of the bridge for the river. And right across there is the runway. We'll be coming up here pretty soon. Not a rainy day. It was dry under the cloud layer that day, thankfully, and it wasn't really windy of any, bad wind. It was a relatively smooth, calm day, and we were able to fly this and just have a ball. It was a great day. You can kind of see the runway starting to come into play here. Beautiful long runway. I want to say it's about 6,600 feet long, but it's actually 2 runways. They've got one about 4,500 feet, runway 3113, and then they've got a 6,600 runway, which is 0523, and that's the one 90% of the time we land, 99% of the time probably we land on runway 5. This is a really neat view. You can see the wheel comes down. When the front wheel kind of touches, a little puff of smoke comes out, which knows you just kissed it just right, and you didn't, there it was. You didn't slam that thing down. So really cool. Beautiful runway, and the staff at this airport is fantastic. They don't have a tower. It's weird. They used to have a tower. I don't know when it quit working, but they don't have a tower there anymore, which to me doesn't make any sense. I'm not quite sure you would have a tower at one point in time and not have a tower now. And they fly commercial flights out of this place. They have daily commercial flights out of this airport, but the tower isn't being utilized. I never understood that at all. And it would be nice if they had a tower. I remember one time I was training with my instructor at this airport. You see those mountains there. Those mountains were obscured because the cloud deck was about 200 feet. It was a low IFR day. And we took off on runway 5, and my instructor was teaching me how to take off on a runway with a 0-0 visibility. So we tuned that OBS and course to the runway to 0.5. And I put the goggles on so I couldn't see, and I flew that OBS, until we took off. And it taught me a lesson on how to be able to do that. But the big lesson I learned was because the clouds obscured the mountains. I remember him, which J.D. Williams was my instructor, a great, great guy. We lost him a number of years ago to a heart attack, sadly. But this guy was a military pilot, flew for American Airlines, a brilliant, brilliant instructor and a wonderful man, wonderful Christian father. Taught me a lot of lessons. But I remember one time we took off on this runway and we were headed up, and I start punching my autopilot buttons, and he just slaps my hand away and says, "Quit pushing the damn buttons. You're going to get yourself killed." And I didn't understand at first what happened, and then I realized that I had pushed alt altitude hold, and so that meant I had come up and then leveled and was going to run right into the mountain. So he taught me a lesson: push the button, see what the button does, make sure it does what you want it to do, then push the next button. So I hope that helps some of you. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you following along. Please like and subscribe. Share our videos with other people. Have a blessed day. I'm the Dr. Pilot. We'll see you soon.